Sianagon, hello all. Good afternoon, and Wado, thank you for watching. So this is day 4, part B of reading Propaganda by Edward Bernays. And since I got a little carried away, I totally missed the cutoff time for the timer there. So I'm going to go ahead and read the last sentence over. One manufacturer stated that whereas before the show he had not sold any large trimmed hats, after it he had sold thousands. Often the Public Relations Council is called in to handle an emergency situation. A false rumor, for instance, may occasion an enormous loss in prestige and money if not handled properly and effectively. An incident such as the one described in New York American of Friday, May 21st, 1926, shows what the lack of proper technical handling of public relations might result in. $1 million lost by false rumor of Hudson stock. Hudson Motor Company stock fluctuated wildly around noon yesterday, and losses estimated at $500,000 to $1 million were suffered as a result of the widespread flotation of false news regarding dividend action. The directors met in Detroit at 12:30 New York time to act on a dividend. Almost immediately, a false report that only the regular dividend had been declared was circulated. At 12:46, the Dow Jones Company ticker, I love it. Service received, because 1928, right? Received the report from the stock exchange firm, and its publication resulted in further drop in the stock. Shortly after 1 o'clock, the ticker services received official news that the dividend had been increased and a 20% stock distribution authorized. They rushed the correct news out on their tickers, and Hudson stock immediately jumped more than 6 points. A clipping from the Journal of Commerce of April 4, 1925 is reproduced here as an interesting example of a method to counteract a false rumor. Beechnut head hometown guest. Bartlett Arkell, or Arkell, A-R-K-E-L-L, signally honored by communities of Mohawk Valley, in parentheses, special to the Journal of Commerce, in parentheses. Canajoharie, C-A-N-A-J-O-H-A-R-I-E, New York, April 3rd. Today was Beechnut Day in this town. In fact, for the whole Mohawk Valley, businessmen and particularly the whole community of this region joined in a personal testimonial to Bartlett Arkell of New York City, president of the Beechnut Packing Company of this city, in honor of his firm refusal to consider selling his company to other financial interests to move elsewhere. When Mr. Arkell publicly denied recent rumors that he was to sell his company to the Postum Cereal Company, P-O-S-T-U-M, for $17 million, which would have resulted in taking the industry from its birthplace, he did so in terms conspicuously loyal to his boyhood home, which he has built up into a prosperous industrial community throughout 30 years management of his Beechnut company. He absolutely controls the business and flatly stated that he would never sell it during his lifetime to anyone at any price, since it would be disloyal to his friends and fellow workers, and the whole Mohawk Valley spontaneously decided that such spirit deserved public recognition. Hence today's festivities. More than 3,000 people participated, headed by a committee comprising W.J. Roser, R-O-S-E-R, Chairman B.F. Spraker, S-P-R-A-K-E-R, H.V. as in Victor Bush, B.F. Diffendorf, D-I-E-F-E-N-D-O-R-F, and J.H. Cook. They were backed by the Canajoharie and the Mohawk Valley Chambers of Business Men's Associations. Of course, everyone realized after that there was no truth in the rumor that the Beechnut Company was in the market. A denial would not have carried as much conviction. Amusement, too, is a business, one of the largest in America. It was the amusement business, first the circus and the medicine show, then the theater, which taught the rudiments of advertising to industry and commerce. The latter, adopted the ballyhoo of the show business, but under the stress of practical experience. I was thinking about bacon bread. I'm sorry, I gotta put a loaf in the oven. I really gotta stop thinking about stuff. Does anybody else's mind wander when they're reading stuff? Let's see. But under the stress of practical experience, it adapted and refined these crude advertising methods to the precise ends it sought to obtain. The theater has, in its turn, learned from business and has redefined its publicity methods to the point where the old stentorian methods are in the discard. The modern publicity director of a theatrical syndicate or a motion picture trust is a businessman, responsible for the security of tens of thousands of millions of dollars of invested capital. Gosh, that's a huge responsibility. He cannot afford to be a stunt artist or a freelance adventurer in publicity. He must know his public accurately and modify its thoughts and actions by means of the methods which the amusement world has learned from its old pupil, big business. As public knowledge increases and public taste improves, business must be ready to meet them halfway. Modern business must have its finger continuously on the public pulse. It must understand the changes in the public mind and be prepared to interpret itself fairly and eloquently to changing opinion. Chapter 6, Propaganda and Political Leadership. The great political problem in our modern democracy is how to induce our leaders to lead. The dogma that the voice of the people is the voice of God tends to make elected persons the willless servants of their constituents. This is undoubtedly part of the political sterility of which certain American critics constantly complain. No serious sociologist any longer believes that the voice of the people expresses any divine or specially wise and lofty idea. The voice of the people expresses the mind of the people, and that mind is made up for it by the group leaders in whom it believes and by those persons who understand the manipulation of public opinion. It is composed of inherited prejudices and symbols and cliches and verbal formulas supplied to them by the leaders. Unfortunately, the sincere and gifted politician is able, by the instrument of propaganda, to mold and form the will of the people. Yeah, that's a ton of power. Disraeli, Disraeli, cynically expressed the dilemma when he said, in quotes, "I must follow the people, am I not their leader?" End quote. He might have added, in quotes, "I must lead the people, am I not their servant?" Yeah. Unfortunately, and that's end quote. Unfortunately, the methods of our contemporary politicians in dealing with the public are as archaic and ineffective as the advertising methods of business in 1900 would be today. While politics was the first important department of American life to use propaganda on a large scale, it has been the slowest in modifying its propaganda methods to meet the changed conditions of the public mind. Yes, it has. American business first learned from politics the methods of appealing to the broad public, but it continually improved those methods in the course of competitive struggle while politics clung to the old formulas. Like, literally, I don't understand why in the world they just actually let the action speak for it. You know what I mean? Like, tell me what you did, show me that you did that for real, right? And then let me know what you're going to do, right? And then I can choose whether I would like you to be the leader, okay? Like, oh my God. Anyway, the political apathy of the average voter, of which we hear so much, is undoubtedly true to the fact that the politician does not know how to meet the conditions of the public mind. He cannot dramatize himself and his platform in terms which have real meaning to the public. Acting on the fallacy that the leader must slavishly follow, he deprives his campaign of all dramatic interest, and automaton cannot arouse the public interest. A leader, a fighter, a dictator can. But given our present political conditions under which every officer seeker must cater to the vote of the masses, the only means by which the born leader can lead is the expert use of propaganda. Whether in the problem of getting elected to office or in the problem of interpreting and popularizing new issues, or in the problem of making the day-to-day administration of public affairs a vital part of the community life, the use of propaganda carefully adjusted to the mentality of the masses and an essential adjunct of political life. The successful businessman day-to-day apes the politician. He has adopted the glitter and the ballyhoo of the campaign. He has set up all the sideshows. He has annual dinners that are a compendium of speeches, flags, bombcasts, state lines, pseudo-democracy, slightly tinged with paternalism. On occasion, he doles out honors to employees, such as the Republic of classic times rewarded its worthy citizens. But these are merely the sideshows, the drums of big business, by which it builds up an image of public service and an honorary service. This is but one of the methods by which business stimulates loyal enthusiasms on the part of directors, the workers, the stockholders, and the consumer public. It is one of the methods by which big business performs its function of making and selling products to the public. The real work and campaign of business consists of intensive study of the public, the manufacture of products based on the study, and exhaustive use of every means of reaching the public. Public campaigns today are all sideshows, all honors, all bombast, glitter, and speeches. That's true, they still are. These are for the most part unrelated to the main business of studying the public scientifically, of supplying the public with party, candidate, platform, and performance, and selling the public these ideas and products. Politics was the first big business in America. Therefore, there's a good deal of irony in the fact that business has learned everything that politics has had to teach, but that politics has failed to learn very much from business methods of mass distribution of ideas and products. Emily Newell, Newell Blair, Blair, has recounted in The Independent a typical instance of the waste of effort and money in a political campaign. A week's speaking tour in which she herself took part, she estimates that only a 5-day trip covering nearly 1,000 miles, she and the United States Senator with whom she was making political speeches addressed no more than 1,105 persons whose votes might conceivably have been changed as a result of their efforts. The cost of the appeal to these voters, she estimates, in parentheses, calculating the value of the time spent on a very moderate basis, close parentheses, as $15.27 for each vote, which might have been changed as a result of the campaign. This, she says, was a drive for votes. In quotes, drive for votes, just as an Ivory soap advertising campaign is a drive for sales, end quote. But she asks, in quotes, what would a company executive say to a sales manager who sent a high-priced speaker to describe his product to less than 1,200 people at a cost of $15.27 for each possible buyer, end quotes. She finds it, in quotes, amazing that the very men who make their millions out of clearly devised drives for soap and bonds and cars will turn around and give large contributions to be expended for vote getting in an utterly inefficient and antiquated fashion, end quote. It is indeed incomprehensible that politicians do not make use of the elaborate business methods that industry has built up, because the politician knows political strategy, can develop campaign issues, can devise strong planks for platforms, and envisage, envisage, broad policies. It does not follow that he can be given the responsibility of selling ideas to a public as large as that of the United States. The politician understands the public. He knows what the public wants and what the public will accept. But the politician is not necessarily a general sales manager, a public relations counsel, or a man who knows how to secure mass distribution of ideas. Obviously, an occasional political leader may be capable of combining every feature of leadership. Just as in business, there are certain brilliant industrial leaders who are financiers, factory directors, engineers, sales managers, and public relations counsel all rolled into one. Big business is conducted on the principle that it must prepare its policies carefully, and that in selling an idea to the large buying public of, I was going to say buying population, but it says buying public of America, it must proceed according to broad plans. The political strategists must do likewise. The entire campaign should be worked out according to broad basic plans. Platforms, planks, pledges, budgets, activities, personalities must be as carefully studied, apportioned, and used as they are when big business desires to get what it wants for the public. The first step in a political campaign is to determine on the objectives and to express them exceedingly well in the current form. That is a platform. In devising the platform, the leader should be sure that it is an honest platform. Campaign pledges and promises should not be lightly considered by the public, and they ought to carry something of the guarantee principle and money-back policy that an honorable business institution carries with the sale of its goods. Heck yeah, it should, right? If they don't get in there and do that, like, what are they gonna do? Like, what should be the punishment? The public has lost faith in campaign promotion work. It does not say that politicians are dishonorable, but it does say that campaign pledges are written on the sand. Here, then, is one fact of the public opinion of which the party that wishes to be successful might well take cognizance. To aid in the preparation of the platform, there should be made a nearly scientific analysis as possible of the public and of the need of the public. A survey of public desires and demands would come to the aid of the political strategist whose business is to make a proposed plan of the activities of the parties and its affected officials during the coming terms of office. A big business that wants to sell a product to the public surveys and analyzes its market before it takes a single step either to make or sell the product. If one section of the community is absolutely sold on the idea of this product, no money is wasted in reselling it to it. If, on the other hand, another section of the public is irrevocably committed to another product, no money is wasted on a lost cause. Very often, the analysis is the cause of the basic changes and improvements in the product itself, as well as an index of how it is to be presented. So carefully is this analysis of markets and sales made that when a company makes out its sales budget for the year, it subdivides the circulations of the various magazines and newspapers it uses in advertising and calculates with a fair degree of accuracy how many times a section of that population is subjected to the appeal of the company. It knows approximately to what extent a national campaign duplicates and repeats the emphasis of a local campaign of selling. As is the business field, the expenses of the political campaign should be budgeted. A large business today knows exactly how much money it is going to spend on propaganda during the next year or years. It knows that a certain percentage of its gross receipts will be given over to advertising, newspaper, magazine, outdoor, and poster, a certain percentage to circulation and sales promotion, such as house organs, and dealer aids, and a certain percentage must go to supervising salesmen who travel around the country to infuse extra stimulus in the local sales campaign. A political campaign should be similarly budgeted. The first question which should be decided is the amount of money that should be raised for the campaign. This decision can be reached by a careful analysis of campaign costs. There is enough precedent in business procedure to enable experts to work this out accurately. Then the second question of importance in this manner in which money should be raised. It is obvious that politics would gain much in prestige if the money-raising campaign were conducted candidly and publicly, like the campaigns for the war funds. Charity drives might be made excellent models for political fund drives. The elimination of the little black bag element in politics would raise the entire prestige of politics in America, and the public interest would be infinitely greater if the actual participation occurred earlier and more constructively in the campaign. Again, as in the business field, there should be a clear decision as to how the money is to be spent. This should be done according to the most careful and exact budgeting, wherein every step of the campaign is given its proportionate importance and the funds allotted accordingly. Advertising in newspapers and periodicals, posters and street banners, the exploitation of personalities in motion pictures, in speech lists and lectures and meetings, spectacular events, and all forms of propaganda should be considered proportionately according to the budget and should always be coordinated with the whole plan. Certain expenditures may be warranted if they represent a small proportion of the budget and may be totally unwarranted if they make up a large proportion of the budget. In the same way, the emotions by which the public is appealed to may be part of the broad plan of the campaign. Unrelated emotions become maudlin and maudlin and sentimental too easily are often costly and too often waste effort because the idea is not part of the conscious and coherent whole. Big business has realized that it must use as many of the basic emotions as possible. The politician, however, has used the emotions aroused by words almost exclusively. To appeal the emotions of the public in a political campaign is sound. In fact, it is an indispensable part of the campaign. But the emotional content must coincide in every way with the broad basic plans of the campaign and all its minor details, be adapted to the many groups of the public at which it is to be aimed, and conform to the media of distribution of ideas. The emotions of oratory, oratory, have been worn down through long years of overuse. Parades, mass meetings, and the like are successful when the public has a frenzied emotional interest in the event. That's true. The candidate who takes babies on his lap and has his photograph taken is doing a wise thing emotionally. If this act epitomizes a definite plank in his platform, kissing babies, if it is worth anything, must be used as a symbol for a baby policy, and it must be synchronized with a plank in the platform. But the haphazard staging of emotional events without regard to their value as part of the whole campaign is a waste of effort, just as it would be a waste of effort for the manufacturer of hockey skates to advertise a picture of a church surrounded by spring foliage. Don't go ahead and get to minute.